everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Camden, Dr. Camden Morgante, and I'm here with Dr. Kelly. How do you say your last name? Edmiston?
Edmiston, exactly. The emphasis is on the ed, and usually
Okay.
it'll flow from there. Edmiston.
Edmiston. Okay. And I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee. Are you in Texas?
Nice. I'm in Sugarland, Texas, right outside of Houston. Yeah. So we're both Southern girls.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
fun. Is that where you grew up?
No, I kind of grew up moving a lot. I lived in Austin, Texas at one point,
Oh,
my elementary
nice.
school years. But yeah, this has been home now for like 12 years, 13 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's beautiful.
Yeah. But it's so nice to meet you, Kelly. Like, we have so much in common with our
Yes.
stories and with what we talk about, our work, and we have the same agent. So I always want to support my agent siblings if I can. And
Yes. Thank you
so,
so much. That's so
yeah.
nice.
So this is so nice to finally meet you. I really admire your work and your writing, and I'm always cheering you on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well,
today we're going to
same.
talk about Kelly's new book that's coming out, and I don't have a hard copy of it, so I can't show it, but I
Yeah.
have read the whole thing. It's called Shame-Free Sex Talks. So yeah.
Yes.
So Kelly, tell us about your work, yourself, your family, and this new book.
Yeah, no, I'm so excited. And honestly, like when I'm so thankful to have this conversation with you because I really think that my book, Shame Free Sex Talks, is not even really possible without your book. Like your book, Recovering from Purity Culture, is like, it really should be a prerequisite for Shame Free Sex Talks because so many of the parents that I am working with and my primary audience in the book are parents who have deconstructed purity culture and who are truly in recovery. They're in therapy, they're in spiritual direction, they're in deconstruction, they're learning how to re embody their bodies. And so that's really the parent that I'm writing for because so many parents, when they go to approach their child to talk about sexuality, at any stage, the main problem that they are facing is their own body shame, their own sexual history. And so I'm trying to give parents some very practical tools to be able to engage their child to develop what I call spiritual sexuality, which is the integration between spirituality and sexuality, to let those parts of ourselves grow up together, to normalize that conversation about sex so that we can cultivate within our kids a Christian sexual ethic. And so that's really what my work has been. I did 3 years in a doctorate program where I was doing quantitative and qualitative research. And then that research became my dissertation. That dissertation took a lot of work to get it to be a book that people would want to read. But
Right.
that's what the book is about. And yeah, the catalyst for all of that was being a mom. Like looking at these children that I have right now, ours are 13, 11, and 9, almost 9, and looking around for resources to help them to know what to say and not finding anything. Like the stuff that I found would be like, pro-sex, but maybe from an agenda that's not Christian. So like, well, let's just hand out condoms when they're 13 and let's just trust them to explore. Or it was the same purity culture nonsense. I definitely didn't want to give my kids that. So I was like, there's nobody riding a middle way here, but still holding to a Christian ethic. So that was what started my journey. I was wanting something for myself.
Yeah. And you're a pastor too. So tell me about that. I know you're at a Vineyard Church and
Yeah. So I've been the lead pastor at the Vineyard for 3 years now. I've been there at this church for 7. And before that, I was pastoring in Church of Christ, actually, as a youth pastor. And then before that, I was overseas. So yeah, I've been in vocational ministry for over 20 years. And my work has been with students and families and children. And so this book it's for those people who I love so much. I hold their stories in my heart. I have just like a flood of memories and images of people sitting in my office asking me questions about sex, about sexuality, whether it's a kid who, has come out to their parents and their parents like coming to the youth pastor, like, what do I do? Or whether it's a kid who they found out their kid's having premarital sex. And so they're freaking out. They go to the youth pastor. They're like, fix it, pastor. And now I'm working a lot with marriages, families, parenting, And so, yeah, it's just this like Rolodex of stories that I'm pulling from, and a lot of those you'll read in the book. Of course, we've changed names and details to protect the innocent, but all of it is born out of like real on the ground ministry, being in people's homes, being in people's lives, being the one that they call at 3 a.m. when they found out whatever. And so that's such a gift because it's not just academic for me. It's really wanting people's, I want them to flourish. I want their parenting to flourish. I want their sex lives to flourish. I want the way they view their bodies to flourish. And so that's a really, really special component. And I think in the book that comes out. I think I write like a pastor,
Mhm.
not like a academic. And what I've heard, people that have read it, they tell me like, "Oh, I felt like, you were really pastoring me through this." And
Yes.
so I hope that that's what comes through. On the audiobook, it's easier to do that, because you can like
Oh, yeah.
tone of voice and inflection, but that's my pastoral context.
Yeah, it definitely didn't come across like academic and dry research. But it also didn't come across as like, well, I've been a parent for 20 years, so here's my, I don't
Yeah.
personally read those books. Like I gotta have
Right.
somebody who has like some sort of expertise, research, experience in the topic, and is really speaking from that plus lived experience.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, thank you for your compliments on my book. So, Recovering from Purity Culture is my book that published in 2024. I feel like this is your book is the next step. And people ask me
Yeah.
like, "Are you gonna write a second book and make this one about teaching your kids?" And I was like,
Yeah.
"No, just that was the last chapter of my book."
Oh, that okay. Okay. Yeah,
The
I
last
know.
chapter was parenting after purity culture and body shame and like consent and things like that. And I felt like I said what I could in the one chapter. I felt like I can't fill up a whole book on that. And I'm just,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not going to write a whole book on that. So I'm so glad that you did,
Yeah.
and that you definitely could fill up the whole book, and had a lot of good things to say. And it's so aligned with my book. Like you said,
Yes.
our audiences are very similar. Like, if you read my
Yes.
book and you're a parent, the next book to read is
That's right.
Kelly's.
That's right.
And our sexual ethics are very aligned, like the way we see faith, we're both egalitarian, like all of that
Mhm.
is aligned too. And you were saying like kind of finding this middle path, which my subsect's walking the middle path between like the secular culture of like just give your kids condoms or like sex positivity with no constraints, and
Yes.
then the purity culture, shame-filled, stuff that it just uses different language to repackage purity
Mhm.
culture, basically. So, yeah, so
Yep.
we share a lot of similarities in our criticism of both, like, this ethic of shame and purity culture and this ethic of just consent only and hookup culture. So that too you use the word spiritual sexuality. So, like, tell us about that integration and that middle path for you.
Yeah. Yeah, so my background is spiritual formation. So, like, my doctorate is in leadership and spiritual formation, and so in the spiritual formation world, what we're looking at always is, like, what are the components that form a human, And so, like, Willard and Foster and all these, like, great, great thinkers and great minds and authors, have led us, brilliantly, to understand that situation is always body, mind, and heart, right? We can't separate the soul from the body. So that's what purity culture did, right? It sort of extracted the body from the soul. And it said, in order to get to God, in quotes, in order to be truly spiritual,
Mm,
we need to leave our body behind. And so that would be things like we need to leave our sexual desires behind. We need to cover up
pleasure.
our bodies, pleasure behind. We need to bounce our eyes. Like, we have to be disembodied to
Mhm.
come to God, to be truly spiritual, we have to bypass the body. Um, which is ridiculous, and we know that that didn't work. And so my work is to say, like, how do we bring that vision for spiritual formation, which is body, mind, and heart, into the conversation about sex with kids? And to help them understand, first and foremost, and your book does this too, we have to come back into our bodies. Like, we
Mhm.
have to teach kids, I am my body. My body is good. My body is a dwelling place. Like, my actual flesh. This is not metaphor, right? Like, my flesh, my actual body, my genitals, my breast, everything, like, everything about my body is given to me as a resource to know God more. And if we can teach that, then we have achieved spiritual sexuality. If we can teach that my body is connected to my mind and my heart, which that is the soul, that's what makes up the soul, and that I can make decisions about my body with that knowledge, then we have achieved that sort of integration. So that's what my work is. And so I said, what are the components that would need to be present in order for a child to have that integration formed over time? We're talking like, from the time they're born to the time they leave our home at 18 years old. How do we do that? And so it's taking some of those same principles of spiritual formation, about practices, about habits, about becoming a community of creating a community of formation in your home, all those kinds of things. So does that answer your question? That was a long answer to say that's how I understand from a spiritual formation perspective.
Yeah. Okay. And the name of your Substack is Spiritual Sexuality. So
Spiritual sexuality. Yeah.
you write a lot about that. Yeah.
Yes.
So in the book, you lay out this threefold vision for biblical sexuality: covenant, community, and consent. So yeah, neither of us ignore consent. It's
Hmm.
absolutely essential. There's a biblical basis for consent that you really unpack. But I wanted to focus specifically on covenant because I believe that that sex is a covenant in marriage, and
Yeah.
you gave me the theological and pastoral language to better explain that. So tell us more about that covenant, the responsibility, rituals, sign. To kind of walk through that with me.
Yeah. So in every biblical covenant in the Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, there is a sexual fidelity component. And
Mhm.
so when we're talking about covenant theology, I'm saying that from the very beginning in Genesis, there was a command to be fruitful and multiply. Of course, we understand perhaps the earth needed to be populated or whatever, but there's still a fidelity component. And then from there, every other covenant is, around, keeping the bloodline pure or whatever. Um, and then in Christ, of course, you have not necessarily a sexual component, but the body. The body is broken. The blood is spilled. And so I'm saying that in every single covenant in Scripture, there are responsibilities of the covenant, there are sacraments related to the covenant, and there are signs that point to the covenant. And so I'm saying in the marriage covenant between man and woman and God, that the sign of that covenant that points to the promises made, not just between the partners, but the promise is made between the two partners, between the two humans and God, that the sign that points to that promise is the act of sex. And so it is an extremely sacred, extremely important, extremely holy thing, to engage in that. And it should be something that leads to our flourishing. It should be mutually beneficial. There should be mutual pleasure prioritized. So that's how I talk about the importance of covenant. And so with kids, we can explain, yeah, it's a promise that our bodies make when kids are little. And then as they get older, the question is, what promises have you made to, to
Mm,
this to this partner?
mm,
If you're talking about 16, 17, 18, you're talking about your kids they are getting more mature. They are wanting more significant, commitments in their relationships, et cetera, et cetera. But what promises have you made to this person? Because sex is designed to be expressed within the context of promises being made.
mhm. Okay. Yeah. So that's how it all ties in with covenant. Yeah. I think that just gave me language for how to think through it and explain it. Um, that I just, yeah, didn't haven't fully expressed myself.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
tough one.
Yeah. What about the five core values of spiritual sexuality? I find those really interesting too.
Yeah, so those are back to the kind of the components. If we want a child that has an integrated sexuality and spirituality, we want it to be integrated. What are the things that child would have to learn over time? What components would need to be present in order for that to be established? So if you've got spiritual sexuality as your vision, then your values, like if you're an organization leader, your values would be these five, and these five must be present. That a child knows that I am my body. That's that embodiment piece.
Mhm.
That my body is holy. It's where God dwells. That pleasure is good, created by God. That God is everywhere. And that's a really fun one to teach kids. Like, God is in the trees, God is in the grass, God is in the wind that's blowing, God is in my body. If we can teach kids that God is everywhere, He doesn't just exist in this tiny little box, only when I go to church, only when I read my Bible, but that God
Mhm.
is everywhere, then it's an easier jump to say, yes, God is in my body, God is in my breath, God is in dwells within my genitals, dwells within my whatever. And then the last one is, and these kind of build on each other, what I do with my body matters.
Mhm.
So if I understand I am my body, if I understand that my body is holy, that pleasure is good, and that God is everywhere, therefore, what I do with my body matters. It matters a lot. So those are the 5 values that I'm trying to get parents to continually reinforce within the context of their family, not just teaching like lecturing, but practicing, giving habits that teach those, because kids, they don't learn by us lecturing, right? Kids learn by, well, 2 things, by experience and then usually a component of fun. So I try to make it like a little fun, hopefully kids, they're going to roll their eyes and think that we're so stupid no matter what. But I'm hoping that we can approach these conversations with a sense of lightness and fun. Me and Mike, we laugh about it all the time. My kids, like, we make fun of each other. We laugh about these things, but that's how they learn.
Yeah, okay. And the second half of your book is practices for those 5 values. I think that
Yes.
was really unique to your book is that the first half is laying out this vision of spiritual sexuality and the core values, but then the second half is 25 practices, so 5 per value, for parents to do with their kids to practice each of those values. Because and that very much goes along with this sense of embodiment is we're not just
Yeah.
knowing it in our minds, we're living it out with our bodies.
Right.
And that's really how we make change and how we instill these values, like you were saying.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I loved that part, and I was just looking through like which ones do I want to do with my kids, and
Yeah. And how old are yours?
7 and 4.
Boys or girls?
Girl than boy. Yeah,
So
so they're
sweet.
yeah, so they're still little,
Perfect.
but you sent out a Substack, I think, recently about like a 5 senses walk, maybe? Like, doing a walk with your kids and, like, you focusing on one of the 5 senses. Did I remember that right?
Yes.
Okay, and my kids are into that kinda thing at this age. They
That's
don't think it's, corny yet or cheesy or whatever.
love that.
And so, like, they actually wanna do that kind of thing. Like, they wanna go out and,
I love that so much.
pick out the sounds we hear and stuff. Yeah, they're cute about
Oh, it's a
being
sweet
willing to do
age.
stuff like that still with me, yeah, and I
I
love some of
love
your
that.
other ideas about just blessing their bodies and,
Mm.
yeah, so those, they and then you also had scripts in that last value in particular of what I do with my body matters. You had scripts for talking about puberty, talking about porn, masturbation, and then also sexual ethics. So, how did you come up with all the practices? Was that your dissertation or yeah, what was that like coming up with the practices at the end?
Yeah, some of it was dissertation, like using like consulting resources of, people who have gone before me. Again, in the spiritual formation world, especially with children, like there's a lot of people writing really good things about, just the spiritual life of children. And so consulting some of those resources, like how do we teach a child to engage in, prayer or imaginative prayer? So pulling some of that and learning from people who, you know, child psychology, child developmental psychologists and things like that. And then others of them were running focus groups with people in my context, children and teens, and just sort of seeing like what landed, what they hated. And I used, I mean, almost all of those 25. I don't know if they all made it into the book or not, but those were all, like, tested before the final thing. Like, parents in my context would take those home and use them with their kids and bring feedback back to me. And so some of it was done like that too, like trial and error, "Well, let me think about it this way. Let me say it like this." So that's how those were, written. But, yeah, I think it's really the great thing about kids is that they like, if you raise your 4-year-old and your 7-year-old in a family where it's normal to, like, go on a walk and engage your senses and answer these kinds of what might on the surface feel kinda silly or quirky, but when that becomes a habit in your family, they don't know any different. Like, they just think it's, like, a normal thing to go on a walk with mom and take in what you smell, take in what you see, and have that be an avenue to understand God's love. I mean, and you're talking about something that could take 30 seconds or 60
Mhm,
seconds. It's
mhm.
just it's sort of adding these little intentional inputs into their little souls that we think maybe is not a big deal, but over time is a significant formational component that they remember. And then when they're adults and they tell someone that they did that with their mom, their adult friends who maybe they might be like, "That's so weird." But
Yeah,
it's
like, "What is
not,
that?"
it's such a gift, you know?
Yeah, and so much is caught, not taught, so I
Exactly.
just think, like, we can't underestimate these little moments, like, because my kids are still, pretty young, like, and I give examples of, like, consent at such a young age or, like,
Yep.
teaching them to respect their body has
Right.
been for me, like, little things like, "Oh, you say you're still hungry even though you just ate that? I can't imagine how that's possible, but no, I trust your body." Like,
I
it's like
trust your body.
yeah, like, check your body and see, or, like, they'll
Mhm.
say in the car, "Mommy, I'm hot or I'm cold," and I'm like, "Okay, thanks for telling me," like, I'll adjust the air instead of like, "Well, you can't be hotter." "Well, you're hot, I'm not," like, I
Huge.
just little things like that, I think,
It's
teaches them to
huge.
check in and listen to their body, that their body is good and has good
That's
like, a
right.
source of knowledge and information that's important to pay attention to, and that others
That's right.
respect that.
That's right.
Um,
That
yeah,
is
so
huge, especially for our girls, because there's so
yeah.
much in our culture that is teaching them to disembody,
Mhm,
inviting them to not listen to their bodies, to, be smaller, be whatever. And so to teach them from a young age that your body knows what she, and we can use the pronoun too, or
mhm,
he
mhm,
needs, and
mhm,
your job is to listen to her.
mhm,
That
mhm,
is your job. I tell a story in the book about brushing my daughter's hair. And it was exactly what you're saying, Camden, exactly this experience. She said, "Ow, that hurts." She's being such a pill. And I just like reacted inappropriately. And I said, "It does not. That does
mm,
not hurt."
mm,
And she just started crying like big alligator tears. And she said, "It
mm.
does hurt. You don't know what hurts my body."
Yeah,
And she's like 4 or 5 at this point. And of
yeah,
course, it was this moment where I was like, being light
yeah,
bubble, and I'm like, "Oh my of course you know what hurts." Like, and so then I apologize immediately. Sometimes, it takes you a couple days as a parent, but immediately I apologize. I get down on her level and I'm like, "Baby, you're right. I'm so sorry. I should not have said that to you. You do know what hurts your body
mhm,
and you listen to your body." And so these are small things, but in some families, these are minor adjustments that we can make that don't cost us very much, but the
mhm,
benefit is going to be astronomical long term.
yeah. I'm always thinking, because as a therapist, I only work with adults, so I'm seeing people in
Mhm.
their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and I'm always thinking like, what is this gonna sound like in 20 or 30 years? Like that example with your daughter, like I wouldn't want a woman, to say during sex, "This hurts," and "No, it doesn't hurt you. It's fine. You're fine. Just get over it," or just drink alcohol or something. Those are
Yeah.
the things people are told, women are
People
told.
and people do.
Yeah, instead
Mhm.
of believing, "No, like, what my body's telling me is true and
Yes.
valid and deserving of respect." And
Yep.
so, yeah, so it's so
That's
important
right.
that we as their
That's
parents
right.
are giving them a safe place to practice that before they do it
That's right.
with other
That's
people.
such a great connection to even the act of sex. Yeah, because so many
Mhm,
women, especially, they never learned to listen. They never learned to attune. I mean, to any of it. And so you
mhm,
take that into the bedroom. Absolutely.
mhm. What do you say to? Because I get this criticism. What do you say to people who say that, to believe that sex is sacred or spiritual or expresses the covenant of marriage is perpetuating purity culture? Because that is
Mhm.
one criticism I sometimes hear, a one-star review of my book that I got, just
Really?
only one. I think it's only one, but just, that people will say, like, you are still promoting purity culture if you're saying that sex is within the covenant of marriage.
Yeah.
And I'm very clear, like, that's my sexual ethic. I'm not a pastor or a theologian, so I'm not prescribing that for everyone. I want people to figure it out themselves, which you do too. I know. Like, we really value critical thinking and people discerning that for themselves within their own faith and their own community. But yeah, how do you respond to that? Because yeah, I imagine that that might be some feedback that you get or have heard or just that we have in common.
Yeah. I mean, because I'm in Christian spaces almost
Mhm,
exclusively, I really honestly have not heard that because most Christians
mhm,
want to maintain a abstinence before marriage sexual ethic from my view. But if people do, maybe some like in the like post evangelical or deconstruction
yes.
world, they
Mhm,
might criticize me for that. What I
mhm,
would say is that purity culture required a, divorce between body and soul,
Mhm.
and the doctrine of purity culture was if you have sex, intercourse, okay, because let's talk about that first of all. Like, how are y'all defining sex? But if
Mhm.
you have intercourse before marriage, that makes you
Damaged goods.
unholy. Yes, damaged goods. But I mean, theologically, stronger than that. It makes you unholy,
Mm,
unworthy,
mm,
without value before God. I mean, I'm not just
mm,
talking about before your partner,
mm,
but they're equating this with God. They're saying,
mhm,
you are damaged goods before a holy God. Okay.
mhm,
What a Christian sexual ethic says that sex in marriage is preferred, all we're saying is that's God's best plan. like that
mhm,
is God's plan for your flourishing, your holistic flourishing, body, mind, and heart. It's God's best plan for your heart because the act of sex bonds you to someone
mhm, mhm,
no matter what. I don't know anyone with any sort of like common sense that argues with that. Like
mhm,
it bonds you to someone. In your body, obviously, you're joining your body. So body, mind, and heart bond. We're saying that God's plan for you to experience that and the utmost pleasure that God has for you is in the context of a promise. That's very different than saying it has nothing to do with your holiness.
mm,
It just really doesn't. I mean, of course, I think it's God's best plan, and if you choose to not do that, that doesn't make you holy or unholy
mm,
before God.
mhm,
Right?
mhm,
Like that's all we're saying, and that's a very different message than purity culture. So I don't
mhm.
see it that perpetuates purity culture at all. I think it's a different vision
Okay.
for flourishing.
Okay, yeah. The way that I've described it is that a Christian sexual ethic, like, for me, it's been a choice, whereas purity culture
Mhm.
removed choice and agency and coerced it with shame and fear. So I was, being shamed into that because you'll be damaged goods if you don't, or fear-based messaging, like you'll be soul tied and, have terrible sex if you don't, that kind of thing. Like, the shame and fear is how I have distinguished it. Like, this is a choice born out of my faith and values and the work that
That's
I've done
good.
to reconstruct my sexual ethic. Yeah, but I like that distinction between, like, we're not making a judgment on one's holiness or purity, or
Mhm.
value before God or others,
Yep.
but that it's God's best plan, for our safety and flourishing. Yeah,
Mhm.
and I always add the caveat that that's within a healthy marriage, because certainly work with
Absolutely.
lots of couples and women who have not experienced the benefits of waiting until marriage because the sex and the marriage has not been healthy and honoring
Right.
of themselves. So
Right.
I know
That's
you've
a
seen that too.
that's a great distinction too, even talking to our kids, because yeah, when we were growing up, we didn't have that choice. Maybe the ethic of abstinence before marriage was the same product, but how we got there was so radically different. And so as parents on this side of it, we're saying, we don't want the purity, like we want to take our kids out of purity culture in that sense, which is like components that would form them without their consent.
Yeah,
We don't
that's
want
good.
we don't wanna do that. We don't want our churches doing that. We don't want our families doing that. We don't want anything that they're consuming to be giving them that message because culture by definition, you're not making a choice, right? We're being formed.
Absorbing. Mhm.
We're
Yeah.
absorbing. And when
Yeah.
you're little, you can't deconstruct that. You can't interrogate that message if you're little. And everyone in a religious space of authority over you is giving you the same message. You don't have a choice. That's just a great point. I'm gonna think about that more.
Mhm. Well, I'm gonna have you, lead us in a practice as we wrap up, but before we do that, I was gonna ask, is there anything else, like, you wanted to share or anything else, like, I didn't ask you or questions you have for me or
Hmm.
anything else?
Yeah, I mean, so many. I would love to know how, like, where, theologically or scripturally you come at, because I talk a lot about consent, but where you're coming from with teaching consent, because purity culture and, the text as well, it's not very favorable for women and
Mm.
consent.
Yeah, I definitely think looking at First Corinthians 7 in a different light,
Mm,
and you say the same thing, that Paul was really being revolutionary in a time when women were considered property and had no rights, to say that the husband's body belongs to the wives as well, and
yeah.
So I think that is a really important scripture that's very often misinterpreted and misused
Mhm.
in an abusive way. But really, I think the grounding for that for me is the Imago Dei. You know that we're all made in the
Yeah.
image of God, and so we're all worthy of dignity, value, and respect. And so we have to give that respect to ourselves and to others. And so we respect others' bodies by not, touching them without their permission because they're in charge of their bodies and we're in charge of ours. And
Yeah, that's
so
good.
are some of the theological foundations for consent for me. What about for you?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly where I would go. We're God dwellers. If our bodies are God's dwelling place, then what we do to another body, we do to God. And we should take that very seriously.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
What has the book writing process, like going from dissertation to book, which I don't know about you, but I think writing a book is harder than a dissertation.
Yeah.
What you were
A
saying about
different way.
yeah, you were saying, like, making it interesting, like, I can write a dry dissertation just
Mhm,
reporting research, all day long, but
mhm.
to make it interesting and engaging and connect ideas, like, there's so much more synthesis in a book, I think, than in a dissertation because 'cause I'm writing my 2nd book now, and so
I
I'm in the
saw.
process of that. Yeah, so what has the book writing process been like for you? And it comes out in June, right? So what kind
It's
of
yeah, it's out July 7th.
Oh,
Yeah.
July, okay, July 7th. So where are you at now with
Yeah.
the promotion part of it?
Yeah, I mean, just trying to promote it. Like, just doing, like, this interview and this thing and this thing, and it's such a blessing, but no, I think yeah, it's definitely been a different thing than writing a dissertation because, you know, in the book, I'm trying to speak to people's real lived experiences. And that's not so much the case with the dissertation. Like, yeah, you're synthesizing information, you're reporting on research, you're not doing too much. Although a doctorate in ministry is a little different. You're trying to do some life application, but it's just very different than there's going to be something someone's holding in their hand. They want immediate, actionable,
Mm,
something that's going to make a difference today. I say, like, when you're picking up your groceries, which is really exactly what I'm doing as a pastor and a preacher. Like, I'm always trying to take a concept that might be abstract or a concept that might be difficult for just the regular person who's not studying this all the time to grasp and make it like very bite sized. And so I think I had that muscle sort of already built with the book, and then I have an amazing editor. I mean,
mm.
she just slashed so much of what I was trying to put in there. She was like, "People don't care. No, this doesn't make sense. No, this doesn't connect."
Yeah.
Just like relying on her as the expert to tell me, what needs to make it. And so much, of course, as you know, doesn't make it in the book. I have just pages and pages of things on the research side that they're just like, nobody cares about this.
Yeah,
I know you think this is awesome, but
right,
they don't.
right, yeah, yeah, the book writing and publishing world is just it's like a whole whole 'nother thing to learn when you're a professional in your field or in your ministry, and then and having a doctorate, and then it's just yeah, it has required a whole different skill set and,
It's a
different
lot.
yeah,
Yeah, it's a
different
lot.
training.
And are you releasing the name of your next book? Have you put it out? I can't remember.
The publisher has not decided, the publisher
Okay.
gets to decide the title, so they haven't
Yeah.
come back with me, they haven't come back to me with that yet, but it's on reparenting yourself, so
Wonderful.
yeah, so, yeah, I'm actively writing it, like, just, before I got on this call, working on, one of the chapters, so
Yeah.
I'm kind of excited because 'cause I'm not talking about sex anymore, I had to take a break from that.
Okay. It's not related to sexuality at
No,
all?
no,
Okay. Good.
no, it's just reparenting yourself, when it comes to, like, your attachment, your emotions, and
Mm.
all of that breaking cycle stuff that us millennials especially are doing,
Yeah.
and especially those of us who grew up with Dobson style, parenting,
Yes.
just the
Yes.
control-based parenting, and now we're leaning into the gentle parenting and more connection and attachment-based, and it's like, how do we make that shift when we've been taught, like, your heart is wicked and deceitful, or you need to break your will, the child's will, and, that kind of
Oh.
thing, so,
Are you pulling
yeah.
from specific frameworks there, like attachment theory or other modalities, or is it going to
Mhm.
be sort of more like wide sweeping?
Yeah, definitely evidence-based therapy practices, attachment theory, IFS and parts work, infernal impact
Oh,
analysis. Yeah, so I use a lot of that. Um, but really, like, the common thread in all my work is, like, healing from toxic beliefs while holding on to your faith, and so,
Right.
I feel like the first book was healing from these toxic beliefs about sex while holding on to your faith. Now it's healing from these toxic parenting practices and beliefs while holding on to your faith, and so
Oh, I love that
yeah.
so much. I
Thank
think it's
you.
like I think it's one of the most important things that maybe I was never taught about being a parent is that, like, the best thing I can do to
Yes.
show up for my kids is to heal my own whatever it is, like, whether it's the
Yes.
toxic messages or my inner child, like, to go on that journey of healing is actually the best thing I can do for my kids, to
Yep.
not read a book. So I'm saying to whoever might watch this, like, read Camden's book before mine. Because, like, if you're showing up in front of your kid and you haven't done any of that work, like, it's just, it's not going to work. You know,
Mm.
like we lead out of an overflow, like of what's coming out of us. And
Mhm.
if we're holding on to those toxic messages and all that, all those wounds all the time, we're just going to be not able to really lead our kid with a lot of competency. That's a really,
Right.
really, really hard message.
Yeah, it is because it's not a quick fix, and
It's not a quick fix.
it's easier to just say, like, "Oh, what are 2, 3 steps I need to do with my kids," rather than to work on ourselves, but
But
that's
they'll pick
really
it up. Yeah, they'll pick it
yeah.
up. If you're trying to say, like, your body is good, but you hate your own body,
Mhm.
gonna be caught.
Yeah.
They're gonna catch it.
Yeah, yeah, you told that story in your Substack about your daughter saying your belly was what did she say, squishy or
Like, squishy, "Your belly's so squishy."
Yeah. Yeah, and I commented, "Yeah, my daughter said mine was warm and, what did she say? Warm and soft or something," and I'm like, "Yep, you just snuggled right in there." Yes. So
And we have to be honest about, like, especially as women, that, like, embracing our squishy whatever it
Mhm,
is a lifelong journey. But
mhm.
naming that is the begin if we have to start there, like, naming that that was hard, naming that that hurt, and I'm on a lifelong journey to love my squishy whatever, you know?
Right.
And
Right.
we take them along. We don't have to be perfectly whole and healed and everything's 10 out of 10, but we have to be on that journey as parents.
And we all have a memory of our own moms criticizing their bodies
Yes,
and
we do.
watching her do that, and
Yes, we do.
yeah, and so, like, I've been, trying to find a new bathing suit now that it's summer, and I'm trying them on at home, and I'm like, "My daughter's here, she's watching, like, I gotta be
Mhm.
careful what
Mhm.
comments I make or what I say or the faces I make,"
Yeah,
and
that's
just
right, that's right.
yeah.
And that's where, like, I wanna encourage parents too, like, to bring in the fun, even with that, like, dance around in your bathing suit, like, shake your booty, like, just take up all that space in front of your kid, even if it doesn't feel natural, because they're watching you be silly and hold this experience of trying on bathing suits with a lightness and a joy. Like, what a gift for your daughter to see. I love that. I love that. So don't just watch your face, but
Yes.
dance around or something.
Well, thank you for reminding me about silliness and joy, I forget about that sometimes, and
That's how they learn. That's what they'll
yeah,
remember. The silly
yeah,
fun. You think
that's
it's like you'll forget it and they'll remember it forever.
yeah. Alright, well, let's have you, lead us in a practice.
Great.
Yeah, so I
Great.
asked Kelly to pick a practice from the book that she could, like, close us up with, so
Okay. So wherever you are, if you're joining, if it feels safe and accessible to you to close your eyes, you could. You could close your eyes. You could just take a minute to calm the nervous system. One way we can do that is just bringing our breath in through our nose. I'm going to do it here and out through our mouth. Just take a couple of deep breaths in through your nose, out through your mouth. And if it feels possible for you to keep your eyes closed during this blessing, then go ahead and do that. And as I name these different parts of your body, just bring your imagination to those parts of your body. So this afternoon, friend, I bless your feet. May they carry you to new and good adventures. May they carry you to the people you love. May they carry you home, home to yourself, home to God. I bless your hands May your hands be creative. May they make beautiful things. May they hold the people you love. I bless your heart. May it be open to wonder and mystery. May it not be hardened by this world. I bless your throat. May you always have the courage to speak the truth. May you say the thing that needs to be said. May you no longer swallow what you were meant to say. I bless your lips. May you take in what is delicious and nourishing. May you taste and see that the Lord is, in fact, very good. I bless your forehead. May intuition and wisdom guide you. May you trust what God has put inside you. Your body is good. Your body is holy. Your body was made by a God who looked at you and called you very good. I bless you now in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Kelly. That was a great one to
Yes.
pick.
Thank you so much. Thanks for asking me to do that, and thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for joining us. And Kelly's book is Shame Free Sex Talks, out July 7th. Did I
Yep,
get that right?
pre-order now if you would, please. Yep, it's Amazon is the best place. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And you can follow you on Substack, your Substack Spiritual Sexuality. Anywhere
That's the
else you
best
want to
place.
direct people to?
That's the best place. Let me drop my new website in the chat here if people want to check that out.
Okay.
That's a good spot, but really, yeah, Substack is the best.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have
Have
a
a
great
good weekend.
afternoon. Y'all
Bye.
too. Bye.